Hey, welcome to 600 Seconds in HRTech. Today, I am here with Kimberly Williams, who's the CEO of Absorb. Thanks for joining us, Kimberly.
Thanks for having me, Dani.
I'm super excited to talk to you, first of all, because I think you're awesome, but also because of some of the things that are happening in HRTech and some of the things that you're seeing. I particularly want to draw on your background in investing, because I think you have an interesting point of view on what's happening in the learning tech space or in the HR tech space in general. But I want to start maybe with a little bit of background. How the heck did you end up as the CEO of Absorb? It's kind of, learning tech is kind of niche anyway. How did you get here?
Yeah, well, honestly, I think I go way back to when the internet was really becoming consumer facing. And I worked for a company and the CEO kind of looked at me and said, "Hey, you're young. You probably understand this." And that led to me running my first technology business. We didn't call it a SaaS business at the time. We called it an application service provider, but it was basically a SaaS business. And that was how I broke into tech. And I've run a lot of different types of technology businesses. The last one that I ran was an embedded software. So it was like hardware that had, almost like you have, cell phones have software inside the cell phone. So it was similar in that sort of a product. And then it had some more web-based products as well that wrapped around it for reporting. But that company was purchased by a private equity firm, or it's owned by one private equity firm, but another one bought it. And that private equity firm was the one that invested in Absorb. And so when they made that investment, I was originally on the board, and then the founder moved into a board position and out of the day-to-day operations, and they asked me if I would move over and run the business. And so that is how I ended up at Absorb, and it's been great. I love the space, love the company, love the analysts.
Nice. Because you have this rich background in investing, I'm really interested in what you're seeing that is particularly interesting in the space right now, either in learning or in HR tech anyway, because of all the changes. And you've been sending me little things and ways to think about things, but, tell me what you're seeing. What is interesting right now?
Well, I think I'm going to start really going beyond HR tech and just talk a little bit about software in general. So I think that when investment companies are looking on where to place their dollars, they're looking at a few things. So one is they're probably more concerned now than they were prior to agentic coding about making sure that a company has a strong moat. So a moat can be a few different things. So a moat can be being a system of record of some kind. So you can think about Absorb is a system of record for compliance. Or you've got others that are a system of record for payroll data. You have these different sort of areas that you kind of own. So that is one type of moat. Another type of moat would be where your product is valuable from a network perspective. So what brings value is not just the software, but the learnings that are across the entire base that you have. So a consumer example would be LinkedIn. LinkedIn is valuable because of the network. And if somebody could probably go and recreate the software of LinkedIn, but they would never have the power of that network. I don't say never, but that is a really big moat that LinkedIn has. So in HR tech, it would be things where you might leverage learning across companies, best practices in terms of like recruiting or screening candidates, what candidates are most likely to be successful, 12 months in and not turn over. So things where you might build a moat around the network and not just kind of within a company. Another type of moat would be, and this is really applicable in our world, would be a moat around the users of your product. That with agentic AI, what you find is that you get to know the user better and better. And so you're able to deliver higher value services to that user because you know them well. So in our case, with a learner agent, that learner agent learns about the user and is able to adapt sort of how it conveys information, what type of information it conveys, et cetera. So that would be another type of a moat. So in general, investment companies will look at what moat does this company have, or if it's a startup, what moat could they create? Another one that they're looking at would be, how does the pricing work of the product? So historically, it's been, in many instances, a per seat basis. This is more an HRTech thing.
Right. Yeah.
Probably, but as we know, there's going to be some shifts in employment. For example, in the United States, I think healthcare accounts for like 40% of the expected job growth over the next 5 years. And most industries are expecting a decline. So when you're an investor and you're thinking about where do we want to place our money, they're looking at, are there companies that are maybe augmenting a per seat type of a pricing model with something that's more usage based, so that as your product becomes more valuable, you get compensated for that, even if the customer that you have has declining employment. So that would be another example. And then I think probably the most important thing that investors are looking across all technology companies would be, are new customers coming to you? And are they coming to you because that you've got the right vision for this AI era? So, you can have, we've looked at many companies, they have really high earnings, like really, really strong profit margins, but they're not able to attract new companies to them because they don't really have that vision that people are looking for in terms of growth. And so an investment company with all software products will look for that as well, and make sure that the company they're investing in doesn't just have strong historical financial performance, but they're positioned well to continue that growth.
Interesting. So this is particularly interesting because we just barely finished our research on learning tech. We looked at 461 vendors and got sort of deep into what they're saying that they can do versus, what they actually can do and how they're thinking about the market. And those three things align really well. The first one is like, what is my biggest differentiator and is it protected? The pricing is the second one that we're hearing because what most organizations are doing right now is unsustainable. Like it's unsustainable to continue to give AI away. Because it costs on the back end. It's a variable cost. And so that's super interesting. Talk to me a little bit about Absorb particularly. So we've had conversations in the past where you're talking about, and I've talked to your team about this idea of a closed loop. So in the past, the learning experience was the thing that was sold, but increasingly I'm hearing vendors say, no, we're much more interested in closing that entire loop, which means we're absorbing information from other parts of the organization to give us information about what people can do and what needs to be done. We're helping them solve that problem. And then we're also sort of tracking on the back end to make sure that we've done it and continuing to loop. AI is obviously helping with that in ways that we haven't seen before, but talk to me about how Absorb is thinking about that idea of a closed loop.
I'm known for being a really strong operator. And a lot of it is I spend a ton of time mentoring, coaching employees, reviewing their results with them and helping them think through how they can take it to the next level, functional leaders and so forth. And so when we, sat down and started to think about what AI could do for us, I was really excited because I feel like it has the opportunity to do a lot of that coaching and mentoring on a more real-time basis. So basically what we set out to do, we laid out all the different agents that we would need to have. Some of them are agents that are knowledge extraction agents. So you're pulling information from your knowledge bases, SharePoint, the courses you've already created, and then the kind of outcome agents where we kind of have this orchestration level where we're looking at for a particular employee or group of employees, what are the outcomes that they're generating, and then what training do they need to continue to advance. So as an example, we're working with a client right now. They happen to use Zendesk as their help desk. And so they were, the agent goes out to Zendesk and, can ask a question. What types of training would make the biggest difference to improve first call resolution? And then it would analyze the data from Zendesk. Maybe it comes back in this case and says, hey, you've got about half of your support people who are able to help a customer create a dashboard, a custom dashboard, but the other ones are not. And so it's clear that you've got a training gap between these two. And so then it can say, okay, I need a training course on how to create a custom dashboard. So that knowledge extraction agent goes out and pulls the information necessary to create a course on how to do a custom dashboard, uses Create AI, which is a tool we've had for a long time, to create that course on how to create a custom dashboard. Then the system will ask, do you want to automatically enroll these 20, 50, whatever it was, support people that did not know how to produce a custom dashboard in the course? Say yes. And then you kind of automate I would say it's kind of like AI assisted L&D. Now that L&D doesn't have to be at the corporate L&D level, it can be at the department level. But it also is for the individual employee as well, in terms of their improvement and things that they can do to take their performance to the next level. So if you have an employee who has a weaker, in this case, first call resolution, it can also prompt that specific training for that specific individuals. That may not be what the example I gave about custom dashboards. Maybe they do that just fine, but they've got 3 other opportunities. And so then pulling that information to help them through that. And then I think we also agreed that when we're scoping this out, that courses are helpful, but generally the way that adults work is a little bit, they like to learn as they're doing things, and more of a in the moment coaching. You can think about a basketball coach, kind of yelling feedback from the sideline type of a thing, reading what the defense is and then say, okay, go run this offense against that defense, right? So in the moment, providing that coaching. And so we developed some capabilities around a Q&A agent that allows us to use that knowledge extraction agent to frame things back to the learner or the employee in a really concise way, and it doesn't have to be a course. So sort of like the brain of the company, where you bring all this knowledge together and then are able to provide them answers about standard operating procedures, or, hey, what was this promotion? Your retailer, and a store employee, like, hey, what end caps were I supposed to set up for this? Those types of things.
So I think this is super interesting because we're moving from sort of a peanut butter approach to a very, very personalized approach for each individual employee or worker. I also love the fact that you just talked about, hey, adults maybe don't need a course. Maybe we should be teaching them in different ways or providing information in different ways. So you talked about sort of like a Q&A, and you also talked about creating a course and automatically assigning it. How are you thinking about what triggers that? So those are sort of 2 different ways. One is sort of employee-led. The other one is organizational-led. Do you have a philosophy on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's, the example I used about the custom dashboards, this probably starts with that manager of support where they have a KPI that they're supposed to improve their first contact resolution. And so they are looking for that specifically. But for an employee, it can come from the KPIs that they have. So if you're a salesperson, for example, typically you're going to have commission-based, but maybe you have kickers for price realization or for adding on a new product or something to a deal. And so in that particular case, the employee would have their own KPIs, and then it would the system would, probably in that case, integration with Salesforce to understand, or whatever their CRM is, to understand how are they performing, what kind of deals are they winning, what kind of deals are they losing, are they realizing price at the best level, where are the opportunities, and then coming back with that feedback for them as well.
Do you think the organizations are ready for this? I mean, in some way, organizations have to be ready to sort of feed that data in and sort of act on it. Are you finding as you're talking about this with your customers that they're ready for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at companies like what we've built is a bit like Lean. It's a bit like Lean with learning attached to it. So I think you would say, yes, companies are generally ready for Lean. They're doing it. And not everyone, obviously, has been implementing it. But I think in that, in those particular situations, I'd say, yes, there's definitely, and some people aren't, right? And they need to experience it a little bit longer. But I would say that when you think about industries like healthcare, hospitality, or retail, they really, one of their biggest struggles is consistency. And so being able to drive that common, being letting an employee lay their hands on the right standard operating procedure without having to dig through a bunch of material to get there, and just being more precise with what they need to do really drives consistency. So I think there's a huge business need for it. And, obviously it's a little bit challenging. The role of L&D really changes in this world. And I think you and I talked last time about how, because L&D they could only do so much. So they would focus on what were common problems across the organization. So new leader training or high potential training that was needed regardless of whether somebody was in marketing or finance or IT or whatever it was. And we talked about at the time how AI really addresses the long tail of skills. And so I think it does mean that L&D will have to change their focus a little bit more in terms of making sure that they're pick the right tools, make sure that they're integrating, bringing in the right stakeholders so it can be integrated with the right systems and so forth. But yeah, I'm excited about where it's going. And I think a lot of people in L&D have long wanted to be able to make the kind of operational difference in the business and prove that value. And I think this is setting that up for success to do that.
I super duper hope so. I think you're right. Like we're hearing, in 2017, we started talking about something called Invisible L&D, which is like a tactical team on the ground that's in the work and sort of helps things happen along the way rather than as a standalone silo on the side of the org. And it feels like that's kind of where we are. I think you call them operators. We're also hearing enablement a lot. Like the role of L&D is changing, maybe to one that is less visible, but infinitely more important, I think.
They have had for, I think, a number of years, a good seat at the table, but I think that is going to grow and they can bring power of performance to the organization in a way that they haven't before.
Yeah, I super duper hope so. I want to talk a little bit. You sent me some things to look at, and in one of those things, there was a list of, I think you call them AI proof skills. Is that what you call them? Which I think is fascinating because it was an interesting way to look at it, right? Because most organizations are like durable versus disposable and all kinds of different ways of looking at it. But you're like, no, these are skills that you need even with AI, if AI comes and takes the rest of it. So talk to me a little bit about what was on that list and maybe why you generated it.
Yeah, I'll go back to, I built this app. And why did I build the app? It started with, I think a lot of my own employees didn't really know where to start. And they couldn't envision how their job was going to evolve and change with AI. And so I built this tool where they could put in their job description. It would say, okay, here are the activities of your position that are likely going to be AI resilient, or here's the ones that are going to go away. And then here's the skills you need in order to do those AI resilient activities. And it provided things that they could do in their day-to-day work to work on those skills and continue to get better at those skills. Provided links to courses they could take in our course catalog to improve those skills. And then it also had, hey, and if you don't know how to use AI at all, here's how you can start to practice using it in very real applications of your day-to-day work. And so the nice thing about it was, if you've got one person in your company who is an SEO manager, as an example, pretty specific on things they can do that was very different than if you were like a customer success manager. So that's how I started it. But we have a lot of friends who are CHROs and other HR people. So then I showed one of it, just sort of like spiraled. And a whole bunch of people started using this app outside of my team. And we had, thousands of people who had
that's awesome.
entered their job description and kind of taken a look at how their job was going to evolve. And so then I took all of that data and then I had it, I used AI to come up with what were the common themes. And that was what I had sent you. I think you had a post on LinkedIn about what did I think were going to be some of the skills that weren't going to go away. I'm like, well, I don't know, this is what my data is. That's what I think.
I've created an entire thing and talked to 1,000 CHROs. So here you go. Yeah, I love that.
The other way that we use that is we made a decision last year to change our hiring profile of new employees.
Okay.
And for a couple of reasons. One is almost every job is going to change significantly. And so we felt like we needed the personality of somebody who would be open to change, who would seek out change. We call it like, are they willing to color outside the lines?
Okay.
Take those risks. And so we started to screen for personality traits that we felt would be more conducive to the amount of change that's going to happen in the corporate world. And then we added that then. That was like kind of our first round of interviews, and those were not specific to a job at all. But then in the second round, if they passed that, instead of interviewing for what the job was today, we interviewed for where we thought the job was going to be.
Oh, wow.
And changed some of the questions that we asked so that we kind of honed in on those AI resilient activities and the skills that supported them to make sure that we felt like they could grow as the job changed and evolved.
I like that. I like that a lot. One of the terms that I think was on that list, as well as something that I heard a whole bunch last week at Learning Technologies, as well as something that you've written about, is this idea of judgment. So it feels like judgment is a skill that we're never going to totally offload onto AI, I hope. Because there's so much nuance in everything. I'm curious what you see happening in organizations with respect to judgment. Are we going too far in offloading it onto AI, and what maybe cautions you would provide to leaders kind of thinking through that?
I worry a lot about people who don't have a lot of business experience because they don't have the context of when something comes back. So like we're working on some enablement material for a new product that we have. And I go back, like I've worked in retail, I've worked with hospitality companies, I've worked with manufacturing companies, I've worked with healthcare companies. So like I can draw upon all of these very individual experiences. I've done value stream mapping, I've done Six Sigma, I've done lean manufacturing. And so it's a lot easier for me to come in and sort of look at something that, we had asked AI in this case to, I think, help us kind of develop an implementation playbook on some aspects of this product. And for me, it was easy to go, yeah, that makes no sense because it needs to really focus here. And then I could go back and kind of provide some additional guidance. So AI has been super helpful, like for me, for everybody. I think my job has changed a lot by having it. But if you don't know the questions to ask or the frameworks to give it, it makes it much more difficult. And I kind of like joke around that like now us old people are like really valuable because we have a lot of experience and judgment that we can bring to the table. So I guess, one thing that I would highly recommend is that I think people view when you progress in the organization, you do less and you delegate. And I think that AI really, you need to change that up because you are the one who really has a lot of the experience and the context and the judgment to be able to leverage the tool the best. And so I'd say, a lot of people value like how many people do they have working for them? And I think what you need to be thinking about is like how many agents do you have working for you, or what is the outcomes or the scope of what you control versus just the number of humans that have working for you. And so I think that's going to be a mindset shift, because for most people, they think about, oh, I'm moving up in the organization now. I'm a people leader. And like, that's a big step. But honestly, like, I have somebody who, she's doing something for me, for us, I guess, as a company. And I told her, I'm like, you need to set an audacious goal for yourself. Like, you need to think about, I'm going to be running a $10 million business in a year. Don't worry about the fact you may not need people to do it, because what she's working on is a completely agentic solution for a particular area where you don't have salespeople, you don't have implementation people, you don't have customer success people. Like, it's literally an complete agentic experience. And so she may not have these people working for her. And so you have to redefine what success looks like.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. And I love the framing you put on that. The old people might have value moving forward, because it's true. I mean, Stacia and I are talking about something called the hollowed out expert, which is now AI helps me create this wonderful thing, but there's not enough depth behind it to back it up or understand those things that you're talking about. I've taken more time than I told you that I would take. Just one final question. Where do you think employee development is headed?
We talked a lot about this in terms of like performance management for a company has become, for many companies, pretty compliance oriented. It's used as evidence to support why you made promotion decisions or firing type decisions.
Yeah.
And I think that AI is going to change that, and it brings in training and in the moment coaching as well. And I think that what we're going to see is really employees getting feedback on a continual basis, and that will allow them to improve much more quickly and deliver superior outcomes. So I think that's where I see it going.
Awesome. Thank you, Kimberly.
Thank you. It's good to catch up with you again.
Hey, so a couple of things that stood out to me from the conversation with Kimberly. I wanted to talk to her specifically as the CEO of Absorb, because she has a background in investing, and I wanted to ask her that first question, which is what is investment worthy right now? And she talked about basically, 3 examples of moats. The first one is a system of record, which we see a lot, and we see HCMs and LMSs sort of fill that role. The second one is network effects. If you can understand how people are interacting with each other, that is something that is worth being invested in. And then the third is user knowledge through the use of agentic AI. And this one, she said, is new and probably underappreciated. The longer your agent knows a user or works with a user, the more valuable it becomes, because it gives you information that you can then use to make better decisions in the organization, but it also gives you better information to help that person become a better type of employee. So the first idea was this idea of a moat. What are people investing in? They're investing in those things. So as you look at AI in organizations, look at what it's doing. Is it just helping do the same old things, or is it actually providing new information that can help us make better decisions in the org? The second thing that I thought was really interesting was sort of an aside to the original question that I asked, but she said that they're changing their hiring profile. So last year they made a decision to stop hiring for the job that exists today and start hiring for the job as it is going to exist in the future. And they're doing that in a couple of ways. The first one is they're screening specifically for personality. They're screening for whether people are wired for change, if they're willing to color outside of the lines, if they think differently about the world. That's thing one. And then the second thing that they screen for is these skills that they think are going to matter even when AI has taken over everything else. So she calls them, I think, AI resistant skills. And they include things that we have called durable skills in the past. So these sort of people-oriented skills that aren't going to go away, that AI, at least at this point, hasn't been able to do. And I think that's a really different talent strategy than most organizations are running right now. So I think we can learn something from that from an organizational standpoint. But I also thought it was interesting. I've seen the way that they've started to talk about things in their organization since they made this change, and it's different. They're thinking very differently about the space. The third thing that I heard from her that I think is also true is she said that AI addresses the long tail of skills that L&D could never reach. So if you think about the history of L&D and how We've all sort of been tied to personas or to peanut buttering across everything. We can now get those skills down in the long tail of that bell curve that we have never been able to reach before. And she gives a really good example, the Zendesk example. It wasn't hypothetical. It's happening right now, but it sort of circles back to that idea we were talking about, the closed loop of learning and our ability to reach everybody, not just the average. The final thing that I wanted to mention, and I know I'm probably over, but we talked about judgment as a skill. Stacia and I have been talking about the hollowed out expert, and she has talked publicly about this idea of judgment as a skill. We're starting to hear judgment pop up everywhere. It's not so much, can they push the buttons or can they do the things that we need them to do? It's also, can they do it in context? And so this idea of judgment as a skill that is necessary in one of those AI resistant things, becomes even more important. I actually really loved the way that she talked about the necessity or the very human skills that are going to enable AI moving forward, which is something that we're starting here a little bit more up to. Anyway, it was an excellent conversation. I'm so glad we got to have it. You can find out what Absorb is doing on their website. And if you like this podcast, please follow us and tell your friends. See ya.